Davis here, and I'm glad you're with me tonight. Where are you listening from? And how was your day? Settle in. Take a slow breath. Let the room get calm. A new story waits for you, just like every night on The Curious Case. Tonight, we travel together to a quiet place on the coast. A house with old secrets. Cliffside Manor. Miss Marple steps inside, but something unusual waited at the door. Miss Marple stepped out of the motor car with Mrs. Linton beside her. The air was cool. The sea breeze moved across the garden in a steady, quiet way. Nothing rushed, nothing hurried. It felt like a place made for calm thoughts. Mrs. Linton smiled. "Good to stretch the legs, isn't it?" Miss Marple nodded. Her eyes moved to the garden path. Gravel. Neat. Recently tended. A teapot steamed on a small tray near the steps. Someone had left it there only moments ago. She noticed the warmth rising from the spout. Fresh. Very fresh. The front door opened before they reached it. Mrs. Alderton stood there, tall, straight-backed, hands clasped. "Welcome," she said, her tone firm. Not rude, just firm. She looked like a woman who liked order, a woman who preferred rules to chatter. Mrs. Penbury appeared behind her, small, nervous eyes, hands twisting the edge of her cardigan. "Miss Marple, it's an honor, truly." Her voice thinned at the end, as if she wished to say more but lost her courage halfway. Then came Mrs. Corwin, elegant, precise. Her steps were slow and balanced. She touched her brooch as she greeted them. "Cliffside Manor is happiest with guests," she said gently. Miss Marple noted the polished pearls along her collar. Real, not imitation. Mrs. Corwin had taste. Mrs. Hemsley followed, cheerful, talkative, already reaching for the teapot. "Let me warm your hands, Miss Marple. The breeze tricks you, looks soft, feels sharp." She poured quickly, a little too quickly. Tea splashed over the rim before she steadied herself. She laughed. "I always forget to slow down." Last came Mrs. Flint, sharp eyes, quick movements. She scanned everything, not suspiciously, just alert. Her voice was quiet, controlled. "We don't often have company in the colder months." Miss Marple took her cup. Warm, light scent, a simple blend, nothing unusual. But her eyes drifted again to the garden, to a row of flowers near the path, neatly planted, bright, fresh. One stem was missing, cut cleanly, not torn, not broken, snipped. She noticed the small drop of moisture on the remaining stalk. Recent, very recent. Mrs. Hemsley followed her gaze. "Oh, those grow fast," she said quickly. "Always bending, always falling. I tidy them when I can." But Miss Marple had already seen something else. A small pair of garden scissors sat on the bench. Open, still damp, placed down too suddenly, not aligned with the other tools. Mrs. Linton took a sip of her tea. "Such? A peaceful place," she said. Miss Marple smiled softly. "Yes, peaceful indeed." But her eyes stayed on the cut stem, the angle, the precision, the haste. Someone had snipped that flower in the last few minutes, and not for gardening. The act was quick, too quick, and the reason for it, Miss Marple felt it at once. Something was off, something deliberate. The section ends on this quiet truth. Miss Marple noticed the cut was deliberate. The night settled over Cliffside Manor with a slow, steady quiet. Miss Marple finished her tea. Mrs. Linton had retired early. A soft breeze moved through the corridor. Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt tense. Not yet. Then the wind changed. It rose in one sudden push, a steady lift. A low hum. The windows trembled. Miss Marple looked up at once. Old houses spoke through their walls. She always listened. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. A short pause. Then again. They dimmed in a slow drop, then brightened, then failed. Just for a moment. Just long enough to disturb the rhythm of the house. From the east wing came a voice. Then another. Raised. Sharp. Not angry, just startled. Miss Marple heard movement. A door opening too fast. Feet on wood. Unsteady. The lights flickered again, this time stronger. A pulse, a brief glow. Then quiet. Miss Marple stepped into the corridor. She moved carefully. She listened. The wind pushed against the windows again. A louder sound now. Not threatening, just forceful. Enough to unsettle the night. Then it came, a scream. Clear, high, frightened, from the east wing. A woman's voice, followed by a crash. A heavy crash, glass, wood. Something falling, something breaking. Miss Marple walked faster, her steps steady, controlled. She reached the bend in the corridor just as Mrs. Penbury appeared. Wide eyes, hands shaking. I heard it. I heard it. She pointed toward the east wing door, her voice thin. Mrs. Alderton arrived next. Strict posture gone. She moved with purpose. No hesitation. Everyone stay calm, she said, though her breath trembled at the edges. Mrs. Hemsley rushed in behind them. Her robe loose, hair unsettled. I knew the wind would cause trouble, she whispered. She clutched her throat. Mrs. Flint and Mrs. Corwin were close behind. No one spoke now. Not fully, just short breaths, short murmurs, quiet fear. They reached the room. The door stood open. One hinge strained. The crash had moved it. Slightly offline. Not broken, but shifted. Inside lay Mrs. Alderton's companion for the evening. A guest from the village. Mrs. Redley. She had arrived hours earlier for tea and conversation. Now she lay on the rug. Still, face pale. Eyes half open. One arm folded beneath her. A lamp lay shattered beside her. Glass scattered like crumbs. The room held its breath. No movement. No sound. Only the wind outside. Pushing. Pulling. Pressing against the windows again. Inspector Reeves was called instantly. But Miss Marple did not wait. She stepped closer, quiet, careful. Her eyes moved across the floor, across the rug, across the pattern of the fallen lamp. She saw the angle of the broken pieces. She saw one small detail the others missed. A mark, a smear, very faint, not from glass, not from the fall. Something else, something out of place, something small enough that no one else would see it. Miss Marple saw it at once, and she knew this was no simple fall, and that detail made everything feel wrong. The room settled into a heavy quiet after the discovery. No one moved for a moment. No one breathed fully. Mrs. Redley lay still on the rug. The lamp lay in broken pieces beside her, glass scattered in small, uneven lines. The wind pressed against the windows again, a low reminder of the night outside. Inspector Reeves had not arrived yet. Constable Hart was on his way. The residents waited in the corridor. Some stood, some leaned, some stared at the floor. Everyone looked shaken. Miss Marple stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough to see the space around the body. Her eyes moved slowly. She followed the pattern of the glass. She followed the angle of the fallen lamp. She followed the shape of Mrs. Redley's arm. Then she saw it, near the rug's edge, half tucked under the baseboard, a button, small, round, black. Mrs. Hemsley noticed her looking. "Oh, that old thing," she said. "It must have rolled from someone's coat. We all wear dark colors this time of year." Mrs. Alderton nodded. "Probably from my jacket. I've lost a few." She brushed her sleeve as if to check. She didn't look closely. She didn't want to. Mrs. Penbury knelt down. Her hands trembled slightly. She reached for the button. Miss Marple spoke gently. "I wouldn't touch it yet." Mrs. Penbury froze, then withdrew her hand. Mrs. Flint peered over Miss Marple's shoulder. "A button tells us nothing," she said, her tone firm, dismissive. "People lose them everywhere, especially in old houses." Miss Marple did not argue. She did not correct. She simply watched. She kept her calm expression, but her eyes carried thought. She crouched down, slowly, carefully. She looked at the button again. The surface was not clean. Not dusty, not smooth. It was marked, covered lightly in a soot-like film. Not thick, not heavy, just enough to dull the shine. She touched the edge with her knitting needle tip. Only the edge, only enough to see the smear. A faint line crossed the metal, dark, consistent. Not accidental. She leaned a little closer. A soft smell reached her, very faint, a burned scent. Not strong enough to fill a room, just strong enough to sit on fabric, or on a button. Mrs. Linton whispered, "Is something wrong?" Miss Marple smiled kindly. "Not wrong, just interesting." Mrs. Hemsley sighed in relief. "Oh, thank goodness. I thought it meant something dreadful." Miss Marple gave no answer. Her eyes stayed on the button. Her thoughts followed the soot. She knew soot did not appear on its own. It came from something, or somewhere. It travelled. It clung. It told a quiet story. The residents drifted back a step as Constable Hart arrived. He checked the body, checked the lamp, checked the room. He did not check the button. He did not notice the soot. Miss Marple stepped back as well. She folded her hands gently. She looked at the group, then at the rug, then at the quiet little button resting at the edge. She said nothing. Not yet, because the clue was not the button itself. It wasn't the soot that bothered her. It was where it came from. Inspector Reeves arrived within minutes. His coat held the night wind. His steps were firm, quiet, measured. Constable Hart followed close behind. Notebook ready, eyes alert. Reeves looked at the room first, then at the body, then at the residents gathered in the corridor. "Thank you for waiting," he said, his voice low, steady. "Let's begin." He guided everyone to the sitting room. No one argued. No one wanted to stay near the east wing. The house felt heavier now. Not loud, just heavy. Mrs. Alderton sat upright on the sofa, hands clasped, face controlled. She spoke first. "I heard nothing until the scream," she said. "I was in my room, reading." Her tone was firm, too firm. Mrs. Corwin spoke next, calm, measured, elegant as always. "I heard voices," she said. "I thought it was the wind at first." She paused. "I was near the stairs, just passing through." Miss Marple noted the difference at once. Alderton had said she was in her room. Corwin said Alderton walked past her. 2 stories. One truth, one not. Constable Hart wrote quickly. Short notes, short lines. He did not look up. Mrs. Hemsley took her turn. Her voice rushed. Words quick. "I was making tea. I spill when I'm nervous. I dropped the spoon. I bent down. I heard the scream. I ran." Hart asked, "What time?" She hesitated. "Just before the lights flickered, or after. I can't be exact." She wrung her hands. Mrs. Penbury spoke quietly, almost a whisper. "I heard a door, then a cry. I froze. I didn't move until I saw Mrs. Alderton run past me." Another contradiction. Alderton said she came from her room. Penbury claimed she ran from the corridor. Now Mrs. Flint, sharp-eyed, sharp-voiced. "I heard nothing," she said. "I was asleep. The wind woke me later." Miss Marple watched her. Mrs. Flint blinked more than usual. A small tell, a small sign. Inspector Reeves nodded slowly. "Thank you. We'll review each account carefully." He asked Constable Hart to prepare a small table in the center of the room. A simple table, polished surface, enough space for a few items. "Bring everything found near the scene," Reeves said. Hart returned with a tray. On it lay the broken lamp base, the scattered glass pieces, the button with soot, and 2 identical items, small metal clips, both black, both scratched. Mrs. Hemsley frowned. "Oh, those look like hair clips," she said. "Many of us use them." Reeves picked up one, then the other. "They match," he said, "but not perfectly." He held them toward the light. One clip had a faint bend, the other a faint polish mark. Mrs. Corwin leaned forward. "I only own one," she said softly. "Not 2. Mrs." Alderton whispered. "Someone must have dropped them." But she did not meet Miss Marple's eyes. Miss Marple looked carefully at both clips, her mind quiet, thoughts arranged in calm rows, patterns, angles, marks. Only one had been changed, and she knew which one. Miss Marple saw which one had been changed recently. The wind eased by morning. Not fully, just enough to let the house breathe again. Inspector Reeves suggested they check the grounds. Miss Marple agreed at once. Fresh air helped the mind, and outdoor clues often said what indoor rooms tried to hide. They stepped onto the stone terrace. The sky hung low, quiet, still. The garden stretched ahead in neat lines. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. But Miss Marple felt something unsettled beneath the calm. Reeves pointed toward the grass. "Look there." Miss Marple followed his hand. Soft. Slipper footprints. Clear. Even. Leading away from the manor. Not boots. Not shoes. Indoor slippers. A woman's size. Reeves crouched down. "Tread depth is light," he said. Someone walked slowly. Miss Marple nodded. "Yes, and carefully." The prints held their shape despite the night wind. Someone had walked after the weather calmed. Not during the worst of it. They followed the trail, step by step. The prints crossed the garden, past the rose bed, turned slightly toward the older path. Miss Marple stopped. She looked at the edges of each footprint. The soil was disturbed in a smooth curve. Foot and slipper. No dragging. No running. A calm walk. Or a controlled one. Halfway down the path, the prints stopped. Just stopped. No fading. No smudging. No overlap. They ended in a clean finish. Reeves frowned. "Impossible," he said. "Prints don't vanish." Miss Marple looked ahead. The stone walkway began only a few steps farther. Dry stone. Completely dry. Too dry for the morning. She touched the surface. No dampness. No mud. Not even a trace of a heel. "A clean path," she said softly. "Cleaned recently. Very recently." Reeves checked the edge. "Brushed," he said. "You can see the sweep marks." Miss Marple nodded. "Someone removed the prints, but only beyond this point." "And left the ones behind?" Reeves asked. "Yes, to tell a story." They scanned the stone wall on the left. Weathered, neat, but one corner held something small. Reeves spotted it first. "Cloth," he said. Miss Marple leaned closer. A thread of fabric, caught deep in a chipped stone. Dark, fine, soft, likely from a sleeve. Not outdoor wear, something worn indoors. Reeves held it with tweezers. He examined the fiber. "Not from my uniform," he said. Miss Marple studied the color. "Not from Mrs. Redley," she added. The tone was different, a deeper shade, more expensive, more careful. She looked back toward the manor, toward the windows, toward the corridor leading to the east wing. The timing felt wrong. The path suggested movement after the scream. But the residents claimed they stayed indoors. All of them. Everyone. The wind brushed the grass again. Light. Brief. Miss Marple folded her hands. A timeline was forming. But it did not match the stories given last night. Not one of them. She looked at the last footprint. Perfectly shaped. Perfectly placed. Then at the clean stone ahead. A deliberate stop. A deliberate sweep. A deliberate message. The footprints stopped. But the danger didn't. Inspector Reeves returned to the sitting room with Miss Marple beside him. The morning felt calmer, but not settled. The house carried a quiet strain. Too many stories. Too many small hesitations. Reeves walked to the cabinet near the mantel. The door stood slightly ajar. Not broken. Not forced. Just open enough to show someone had touched it. Miss Marple watched as Reeves reached inside. He lifted a decanter. Dark glass. Heavy base. Only a small amount of liquid inside. Far less than it should hold. Mrs. Penbury gasped. "Oh, I almost drank from that last night." Her voice wavered. Her hand went to her throat. "I poured a little, then changed my mind. I don't know why." Reeves opened the stopper. He leaned in, smelled it. He frowned. Not sharply, just enough to show concern. "It's wrong," he said quietly. Miss Marple nodded. Yes, the scent is not natural. Something else is there. Mrs. Hemsley stepped forward. Her hands fluttered. I moved it earlier, she admitted. I was dusting. I put it on the small table. Or, I think I did. I might have confused the bottles. I'm always rushing. She looked at Miss Marple. Her expression tightened. I didn't mean anything by it. Mrs. Alderton entered with her usual firm posture. I locked that cabinet last night, she said. Her tone steady, her face calm. But it seems someone opened it without my permission. She glanced at Mrs. Hemsley, then at Mrs. Penbury, then at Mrs. Flint. No one responded. Miss Marple stepped closer to the decanter. She did not touch it. She only observed the rim, the faint line along the glass, the slight stickiness at the edge, a residue, not syrup, not wine. Something added. Who had the key? Reeves asked. Mrs. Alderton raised her hand. I did, and Mrs. Corwin sometimes borrows it for the silverware. Mrs. Corwin nodded slowly. Yes, but I returned it yesterday afternoon, before tea. Miss Marple looked at the cabinet again. The lock had no scratches, no marks. Anyone with the key could open it quietly, easily. Mrs. Penbury, Reeves said, why did you almost drink from it? She swallowed hard. I can't explain it. I was nervous. The storm unsettled me. I poured a little, but the smell, it stopped me. I thought it was spoiled. Reeves checked the stopper again. A faint ring circled the inside. Someone tampered with this, he said, in the last few hours. Mrs. Hemsley wrung her hands again. I moved bottles when I cleaned. I might have picked up the wrong one. Her voice shook. Mrs. Alderton's tone sharpened. The cabinet was locked. That drink should not have been touched. Mrs. Flint spoke from the corner, her voice a low mutter. Whoever opened that cabinet knew exactly what they were doing. Miss Marple watched them quietly, her hands folded in front of her. Her gaze moved from face to face, calm, steady, thoughtful. The decanter told a story. Someone meant it for someone. But the timing was wrong. The drink moved at the wrong moment. The wrong person reached for it. The wrong hand touched the glass. Someone drank, or almost drank, what was never meant for them. Someone drank what wasn't meant for them. Night settled again over Cliffside Manor. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet heaviness in the halls. Inspector Reeves stayed late. Miss Marple stayed as well. Too many small things felt misaligned. Too many movements did not match the stories. Reeves stood near the East Wing corridor. He ran his hand along the wall. It feels hollow here, he murmured. Miss Marple nodded. Yes, old houses hold old spaces. He pressed gently. A soft click. A panel shifted. A narrow gap appeared. A hidden corridor, dusty, cramped, but walked through recently. Footmarks, light ones, careful steps. We should listen, Miss Marple whispered. Reeves agreed. They entered the narrow passage. The air was still, cool, carrying faint traces of movement. Miss Marple found a small opening in the wood. A peephole. Old. Maybe forgotten. Or maybe not. Voices sounded ahead. 2 residents. Quiet. Urgent. She recognized them at once. Mrs. Hemsley and Mrs. Penbury. They stood close in the small study. A lamp glowed faintly on the table. Soft light. Short shadows. Their hands moved quickly over a stack of papers. She knew too much, Mrs. Hemsley whispered. Her voice trembled. Not with fear, with guilt. Mrs. Penbury nodded. I told you we shouldn't have kept it. It was foolish. She clenched the papers. Now everything looks worse. Miss Marple watched through the gap. She breathed quietly. She counted the movements. She studied their faces. Not murderous. Not cold. Just frightened. Deeply frightened. Mrs. Hemsley opened a drawer. She placed a bundle of letters inside, tied with a faded ribbon. She locked the drawer. Her hand shook. Burn them? She asked. No, Mrs. Penbury whispered. That makes us look guilty. We must hide them, just until this settles. Reeves leaned toward Miss Marple. his voice barely a breath. "Are they talking about the murder?" Miss Marple shook her head slowly. "No, something else." Mrs. Penbury wrung her hands. Her eyes glistened. "I altered the accounts. Only a little. I just wanted to help." "Mrs." Hemsley whispered. "I took the silver pins for the charity sale. I meant to return the money. But now the timing looks terrible." She pressed her forehead. "I didn't think it through." Miss Marple nodded to herself. A smaller crime, a foolish one, a secret between two nervous souls. Not violent, not planned, just desperate. "Mrs." Hemsley whispered again. "She said she knew. She said she saw me take the envelope. What if she told someone?" Mrs. Penbury hugged herself. "She won't now. But what if they find out we lied?" Hemsley's voice broke slightly. "We must stay calm. Say nothing. It has nothing to do with what happened tonight." Her voice dropped. "Right?" Penbury didn't answer. Miss Marple stepped back from the peephole. She understood now. Their secret was messy but harmless. A red herring. Not the core of the crime. Reeves whispered. "So, they're not our killers?" "No," Miss Marple said softly. "They are frightened, but not murderous." She turned her head slightly. Her eyes moved toward the darker end of the secret corridor, because behind them, deeper in the passage, a floorboard shifted. Very lightly, very slowly. Someone else was listening. But someone else was listening. Morning light reached the east wing with a slow, pale glow. Not bright, not warm, just steady enough for careful work. Miss Marple returned to Mrs. Redley's room with Inspector Reeves. Reeves stayed near the doorway. Miss Marple stepped forward, her movements calm, measured, nothing hurried. The room remained undisturbed since the night before. The fallen lamp still lay broken. The rug still held its soft crease. The button sat where she last saw it. Everything looked the same. Almost the same. Miss Marple studied the bedside table. A small tray held a handkerchief, a small comb, and a locket. A simple silver locket, oval-shaped. Not new, not expensive, but cared for. She picked it up gently. Her thumb brushed the latch. It opened with a soft click. Inside, one side held a faded photo. A young girl. Smiling, warm eyes. Likely someone dear to Mrs. Redley. Family, perhaps. A memory kept close. The other side was empty. Completely empty. Miss Marple frowned. Only for a moment. Then her expression settled again. Calm. Still. Reeves noticed. "What is it?" he asked. Miss Marple closed the locket. "The photo is missing," she said quietly. Reeves blinked. "There's one right there." "Yes," she replied. "One, but not the other." Reeves stepped closer. "You're sure it held two?" "Yes." The clasp shows wear on both sides. One held the girl, the other held something else. Something small, something removed. Reeves leaned over the table. "Could it have fallen out?" "No." Miss Marple ran her finger along the empty frame. "Not fallen. Taken. The imprint is too clean. Someone removed it with purpose." She looked toward the wardrobe, the drawers, the writing desk. None disturbed, none open. Whoever moved the second photo took nothing else. Reeves thought for a moment. Anyone could have come in. The door wasn't locked. Miss Marple shook her head. "No. Only someone who knew what was inside would remove it. Someone who understood its value, not money, meaning." She opened the locket again. Her eyes softened. The missing piece mattered to the killer. Enough to risk being seen. She paused. And enough to take only that. Reeves crossed his arms. "Do you think it was a clue? Something incriminating?" Miss Marple did not answer. Not yet. She simply looked at the locket, at the hinge, at the slight mark near the frame. A small scratch, very faint, made by a fingernail or thin tool. Reeves asked, "Do you think we should tell the others?" Miss Marple closed the locket gently. "No, not now." Her voice remained steady, quiet, thoughtful. "I need one more link before we speak." Reeves nodded. He trusted her calm judgment. He stepped back to the door. Miss Marple stayed where she was, thinking, tracing the path of last night. The footsteps, the decanter, the contradictions, the small acts that did not match the spoken words. Someone entered this room. Someone opened the locket. Someone removed the second photo. Someone who knew its meaning. Miss Marple held the locket for a final moment, then set it back on the table. Only one person in the house would have known what was inside. One person knew exactly what was inside that locket. Morning at Cliffside Manor felt thin, not quiet in a peaceful way, quiet in a strained way. The residents gathered in the sitting room, eyes tired, faces tight, movements slow. Miss Marple took a small seat near the window. She watched. She listened. The fractures were showing. Inspector Reeves stood near the mantel. Notebook open. He looked at each woman. "Your accounts need clarification," he said. Small details changed overnight. Mrs. Alderton straightened her shoulders. "I have nothing to add," she said. But her voice lacked its usual firmness. A slight tremor slipped through. Miss Marple noticed. Mrs. Corwin folded her hands in her lap. A calm posture. But her gaze avoided the others. Reeves asked, "Did anyone hear anything after the say?" "First scream." No one spoke. The room held its breath. Then Mrs. Penbury whispered, "I heard a second sound." Her eyes widened as she said it. A second cry. Fainter. I wasn't sure. I tried to tell myself it was wind. But it wasn't wind. She looked down at her fingers. They trembled. Reeves stepped toward her. "Why didn't you mention it before?" Penbury swallowed. "I was frightened. I didn't want to confuse things." Miss Marple nodded softly. Fear made people hide small truths. She had seen it many times. Before Reeves could continue, Mrs. Corwin spoke, her voice calm as always. But the calm felt forced. "I saw something," she said. "Outside, near the garden path." Reeves turned sharply. "What did you see?" "A figure," she said. "Moving toward the stone wall. I thought it was one of us. But now I'm not certain." Miss Marple observed her carefully. Mrs. Corwin rarely volunteered information. When she did, it had purpose, or fear behind it. "And what time was this?" Reeves asked. Corwin hesitated. "Around the flicker of the lights. Maybe a little before. Or after. I can't be exact." Another shifting alibi. Another soft contradiction. Across the room, Mrs. Hemsley rubbed her arms. Her breath quickened. "I heard something too," she said. "Not outside. Inside." Reeves faced her. "What did you hear?" "The pantry door," she said. It opened, then clicked shut, very quietly. She inhaled. It was late, past the storm's worst. "I thought someone was getting a biscuit." Reeves closed his notebook slowly. "Did you check?" "No," she whispered. "I stayed in my room. I didn't want to run into anyone in the dark." Miss Marple looked at the women. 3 new stories. 3 small truths. 3 small shifts in the night. A second scream. A figure outside. A door inside. None matched. None aligned. None fit the timeline as previously told. Mrs. Flint crossed her arms. "All these stories," she muttered. "Convenient. All appearing this morning." Miss Marple looked at the floor, at the shadows, at the slow movement of sunlight across the carpet. The truth sat between the lines, not in the stories themselves. In the order of them, in the timing, in what each woman feared most. 3 new details, 3 different angles. Only one could be right. 3 stories, and only one could be true. The house felt tighter by midday. Everyone walked slower. Everyone spoke softer. Miss Marple sensed the strain. It sat in the corners. Quiet. Thin. Waiting. She asked Inspector Reeves if she might check the east wing again. He agreed. No one else wanted to return there. The corridor felt colder than the rest of the house. Less lived in. More unsettled. Miss Marple moved to the small reading chair near the window. Something on the cushion caught her eye. A small glove. Black. Lightweight. Neatly placed. Too neatly. She lifted it with 2 fingers. It was clean, very clean. But the fabric told a different story. A faint dust mark ran along the thumb, not from the rug, not from the lamp. She turned it inside out. The inner seam held a tiny streak of soot, the same as the button, the same faint, burned scent. Inspector Reeves stepped inside. "You found something?" Miss Marple nodded. "A glove. Left here, but not last night." Reeves raised a brow. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said softly. "This chair has a shallow cushion. Anything placed here overnight would have left a deeper crease." Reeves exhaled slowly. "So someone entered again, after we left the room?" "Yes," Miss Marple replied. "Someone who needed to move a small object, or replace it." She walked to the wardrobe. The door stood slightly open, just like the cabinet downstairs. She checked the lower shelf. Only a small indentation remained, something used to sit there, something missing now. Reeves asked, "What was here?" "A small box," Miss Marple said. "I noticed the mark earlier. Now it's gone." They returned to the glove. Reeves placed it on the desk. He called for the residents. Mrs. Flint entered first. Her eyes sharpened when she saw the glove. Not fear, not surprise, annoyance. A defensive flicker. Reeves asked, "Is this yours?" Mrs. Flint stiffened. "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. Her hands tightened. Miss Marple watched the movement. She always noticed the hands first. Hands told truths mouths tried to hide. Reeves pressed gently. "You're certain?" "Yes." The word dropped too hard, too flat. Mrs. Corwin stepped forward. "I saw a pair like that in the hall drawer, last week. They weren't mine." Mrs. Flint turned sharply toward her. "Why mention that now?" Her tone rose. Sharp edges. Not anger. Fear behind it. Quiet fear. Miss Marple studied the pattern, the glove, the soot, the missing box, the shift in Mrs. Flint's posture. Something connected them, something simple, something close to motive. Reeves asked Mrs. Flint again, "Where were you after we searched the room last night?" She hesitated. Her jaw tightened. "I went to my room. I stayed there." But Miss Marple saw the flicker in her eyes, a brief glance toward the corridor, a brief calculation, a brief moment where truth and lie crossed paths. The glove rested quietly on the desk, a small thing, but small things mattered most. Miss Marple folded her hands, her thoughts aligned. Something new took shape. Not the method, not the weapon, the motive. Miss Marple finally saw the motive forming. Miss Marple suggested a short conversation in the sitting room. Nothing formal, nothing heavy. Just a few questions, asked gently. A soft approach, an old habit of hers. People revealed more when they felt safe. Inspector Reeves stood back. He let her lead. Her method was quiet, but effective. Miss Marple took her place near the small tea table. She folded her hands. She looked at each resident, kindly, calmly. No pressure, just presence. "Let's start with something simple," she said. "Where were you just before the lights flickered?" Mrs. Alderton answered first, her voice stiff. "I was in my room, reading." Miss Marple nodded. She waited. Mrs. Alderton avoided her eyes. A small shift, a sign of strain. Next came Mrs. Corwin. "I was near the stairs," she said. "I told Inspector Reeves this already." Her voice remained smooth, too smooth, practiced. Miss Marple watched her hands. They pressed tightly into her skirt. Mrs. Penbury spoke next. She looked down at her shoes. "I heard something. 2 sounds. I stayed in my room. I didn't move." Her voice trembled. Honesty mixed with fear. Fear of something specific. "Mrs." Hemsley leaned forward. "I was in the kitchen. I dropped a spoon. It clattered. Then I heard the scream. I ran." She paused, her breath uneven. She looked at the floor. Her story felt true, but her guilt about the small theft still made her shaky. Then Miss Marple asked the same question again, softly, exactly the same wording. "Where were you just before the lights flickered?" Mrs. Flint answered last, her voice sharp, too sharp. I told you. I was asleep. The wind woke me. I heard nothing else. She crossed her arms. She pushed her chair back slightly. A defensive move. A small retreat. Miss Marple nodded again. Still calm. Still gentle. Then she asked another simple question. When did each of you last pass the east wing door? Only approximate times. No pressure. A soft question. An easy question, but a revealing one. Mrs. Alderton answered too quickly. Not once. I stayed entirely in my room. Miss Marple raised her eyebrows. Not even to fetch tea? Alderton froze. Just for a fraction of a second. A pause too sharp to be ignored. Then she said, No, Mrs. Hemsley brought me tea. But Mrs. Hemsley blinked. Surprised. I didn't, she said softly. I never went to your room last night. Silence. Then another silence. Mrs. Alderton's breath shortened. Her fingers tightened on the arm of her chair. Her gaze drifted toward the corridor, the one that led to the east wing. Miss Marple did not move. She kept her tone warm, nearly soothing. Perhaps you misremembered, she said. A soft invitation. A gentle push. Mrs. Alderton swallowed. Her voice slipped. I stepped out for a moment. Only a moment. It meant nothing. But it was too late. Too late to fix the slip. Too late to reshape the truth. Her alibi had cracked. Easily, naturally, just by the weight of one simple question repeated at the right time. Miss Marple folded her hands. Her eyes softened. The smallest slip gave away the biggest lie. Miss Marple stepped out into the morning air again. Inspector Reeves followed her. They did not rush. There was no reason to. The house was calmer now, but not settled. Answers waited in the small things. Always the small things. She returned to the first footprint, the soft slipper print near the terrace stones, shaped neatly. Edges clean, depth consistent. It belonged to a woman. Light step. Not hurried. Miss Marple walked the path slowly, just as the person had done. One step, then the next. Calm, even. The prints matched a steady walk. Not panic, not fear. Reeves watched her. Checking the timing? Yes, Miss Marple said softly. The prints began after the worst of the wind. The soil tells us that. Only the top layer shifted, not the deeper soil. He nodded. I see. She stopped halfway down the garden, where the prints ended. A perfect stop. A deliberate stop. No smudge forward, no backward drag. Miss Marple knelt slightly. Her fingers hovered above the ground. There was a pause here, she said. Someone stood still, thinking, choosing the next move. Reeves studied the stone path ahead. It still puzzles me. Why would someone clean the stone so thoroughly? Miss Marple answered gently. To hide the direction taken. If the prints ended without leading anywhere, we would assume the person returned inside, or never left. Reeves frowned. But the garden gate was undisturbed, locked from the inside. Yes, she said. That is the important part. She walked back toward the house, retracing the path. The wind moved gently now, barely there. But last night it had been much stronger, much louder, enough to shift leaves, enough to wipe light prints, but not enough to disturb the deeper marks left later. Miss Marple reached the terrace again. She rested her hand on the railing, then looked upward at the windows. The east wing window, cracked slightly open last night, closed now. Inspector, she said softly, the storm tells us the order. The prints appeared only after the wind eased, not before, and the scream came before that. Reeves stiffened. So the person who made these prints did not flee from the crime. They walked out later. Yes, Miss Marple said. After the scream, after the fall, after the body was already on the rug. Reeves breathed in, slow, steady. That means the prints belong to someone who staged a scene. Miss Marple nodded. The footprints were placed, the stone path cleaned, the fabric left behind. A story built with care. She walked the path again, this time more slowly, her steps light, eyes scanning every stone, every edge, every small indentation. Then she stopped near the stone wall. She touched a faint scrape along the corner, low, thin, fresh, very fresh. "This is the missing piece," she said quietly. The path was not used to escape. It was used to return, to appear innocent, to delay suspicion. Reeves looked toward the house, his voice low. Then the killer wasn't outside at all. Miss Marple folded her hands gently, her eyes soft, thoughtful. The path revealed the truth, silently. The afternoon light faded slowly, not dramatically, just enough to soften the edges of the room. Miss Marple asked to speak with Mrs. Alderton, not privately, not formally, simply in the sitting room, with the others nearby. An indirect approach, a gentle one, the kind that eased truth out of hiding. Mrs. Alderton sat straight as always, hands folded, chin raised, but her eyes looked tired, very tired. She had not slept well. No one had. Miss Marple took the seat opposite her, her voice warm, kind. "I wondered," she said, "if you might help me understand something small." Mrs. Alderton stiffened slightly. "What small thing?" "A simple detail," Miss Marple continued. "Last night, you said you stayed in your room until after the scream." "Yes," Alderton replied quickly. Her fingers tightened, warping the calm she tried to hold. Miss Marple nodded. "Of course. But Mrs. Hemsley told us she never brought tea to your room." Alderton blinked, just once, but it was enough. "And," Miss Marple added softly, "you now say you only stepped out for a moment. A small change, but worth noting." Mrs. Alderton's breath caught. She looked down at her hands. Her voice sank. "It was foolish," she whispered. Miss Marple said nothing. She let the pause settle. "I stepped out," Alderton continued. "Only for a minute. I thought someone had left the pantry light on. I cannot abide wasted electricity. I went to turn it off." Her voice shook now. She wiped her eyes quickly. "It was only that, truly. Only that." Miss Marple tilted her head. "You opened the pantry door?" "Yes." "Late at night?" "Yes." "And the light?" "It was still on," she said. "I turned it off. I promise you." That was all. Mrs. Penbury gasped softly. She had earlier claimed to hear the pantry door open. Now the timeline aligned with her fear, but it did not link to the murder. Reeves stepped forward. "Mrs. Alderton, why hide this?" She covered her face. "It sounded foolish and suspicious, and I did not want my habits taken the wrong way." Miss Marple reached out a gentle hand. "Sometimes," she said, "the fear of how something looks makes us hide what is harmless." Mrs. Alderton nodded slowly, tears forming. "I didn't hurt Mrs. Redley. I swear I didn't. I only turned off the light. I heard nothing else. Nothing at all." Reeves exchanged a look with Miss Marple. This was not the voice of malice. This was the voice of a woman terrified of a small mistake being read as guilt. Miss Marple let the room settle again. She rose from her chair. Her eyes moved toward the doorway. The east wing corridor remained quiet, still, but the truth was hiding there. Not with Alderton, not with her trembling confession. Her small lie only cleared the ground, only removed one shadow, only opened one narrow space in the puzzle. The real murderer remained unseen, still quiet, still careful. This confession only cleared the path for the real answer. Miss Marple walked the corridor one more time. Slow steps, soft breaths. Her eyes traced every corner, every edge, every small piece of the night. She paused near the stone planter by the terrace door. Something rested on the rim, small, barely seen. A corner of fabric, dark, thin, almost identical to the piece found on the garden path. She lifted it gently. The weave matched the thread caught in the stone. Same color, same texture, same pull mark along the edge. But this piece held something more. A faint scrape of soot along the hem, the same soot found on the button, and on the glove. Miss Marple looked toward the east wing. Her thoughts aligned. The sequence was clear now. The movement, the timing, the misdirection, the quiet hand that tried too hard to hide a trail. She turned toward the sitting room. Inspector Reeves waited there. So did the residents. All of them strained, all of them uncertain, all of them watching each other instead of the truth. Miss Marple held the small fabric piece in her hand. She walked forward, steady, certain. "And now," she said softly. She was ready. Miss Marple stood with the fabric piece in her hand. Everyone watched her. The room held its breath. She spoke gently. The footprints were not escape. They were return. She looked at Mrs. Flint. "Only you wore slippers with that tread. Only you walked outside after the storm eased." Mrs. Flint froze. "The soot on the button matched the soot on your glove," Miss Marple continued. "And the missing photo from the locket? That was the one linking you to Mrs. Redley's past. A debt, a betrayal, a quiet resentment." Reeves stepped forward. "You staged the path. You cleaned the stone. You removed the photo. You thought the storm would hide the timing." Mrs. Flint's shoulders collapsed. Her voice cracked. "She threatened to expose me. I panicked." Miss Marple nodded softly. "Fear guided you, not malice." She paused. But the truth still had one more quiet turn. The house grew quieter as evening returned. No whispers, no tension, only slow breaths and softer steps. Inspector Reeves escorted Mrs. Flint away gently. No harshness, no anger, just the weight of consequence. The remaining residents gathered in the sitting room, a small circle, tired faces, hands folded in their laps. Miss Marple stood near the window, her voice warm. "People stumble when fear closes the heart," she said. "But truth, once spoken, lets a room breathe again." The others nodded. The calm was not complete. Not yet. Sometimes calm returns slowly. "This is Davis. Thank you for staying with me tonight. I hope the mystery kept you company. Tell me, which clue did you spot first? And where are you listening from tonight? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. A new story waits for you tomorrow. Another quiet path. Another secret under the surface. Until then, rest well, my friend. Tomorrow, another kettle will boil.